an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Wizard's Holiday, Chapter 4, all of Chapter 4, and only Chapter 4, On the Road. In this chapter, Nita and Kit head out for their exchange program, but Nita has some unsettling dreams, and there's some weird talk on their way to this planet that makes me wonder what the fuck is going on. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Yama for commissioning this episode. Yama is here in the chat, and so is Jacob. Welcome to you both. So, reminder, those of you, maybe Yama, who are only listening to the audiobook, the Chapter 4 in the audiobook is not all of Chapter 4 in the book. I don't know what the deal is here. I've been over this before. I won't try and beat a dead horse. But whoever has done the conversion to Kindle for these books and the audio production is a disaster and should be fired, because I got really confused. I was listening and there was no break, and then I looked down and it said I was into Chapter 5, and I was like, oh, I over-listened, I guess. I don't remember her ever saying Chapter 5. She doesn't say it because Chapter 5 begins midway through Chapter 4. There's only another 15 minutes maybe into Chapter 5 that is part of the actual written chapter, but also the beginning of this chapter is cut off. So Chapter 4 begins partway through the audiobook's Chapter 3. So it's a mess. It's all over the place. I had no idea that I was accidentally listening to some of the next chapter when I listened to Chapter 3 last time. I am going to have to really keep an eye on that. So if anybody has noticed some weird discrepancies with the way that I'm talking about how things happened, it might be because I had gotten it wrong, and I'm going to try and avoid that sort of mistake. Because, oops. So, Chapter 4 starts off with Nita being up. Let's see, Jacob says, I think it might be where you would eject the cassette tape and put in the next one. I don't think so, because they're close enough together. It's 40 minutes. I mean, I don't remember how long the average cassette tape is, but I don't get that impression. But it doesn't matter. Whatever the case, apparently there were not the resources to update it, but it is just really confusing. And, it's just frustrating that it's not even mentioned anywhere. But anyway, so Nita is in, bed reading all of this stuff about the place that she is heading. And there is something about this that I know it probably should sound like it's reassuring, but it just makes me feel really unsettled. They had never had a war on Alalu. They didn't seem to have any diseases. The manual said there wasn't any crime. Their climate was so stable, so that natural disasters like floods and hurricanes happened only once. Sorry, guys. I'm having to use my phone, and Owen just texted me. Natural disasters like floods and hurricanes happened only once or so every few centuries. Their planet's tectonics were unbelievably leisurely, so that whole lifetimes might go by without there being even one earthquake or volcanic eruption. It has to do with the size of the planet, I guess, Nita thought, sleepily reaching out to touch the folder to get the content she was reading to scroll down a little. And there's no moon big enough to stress the planet's crust, and the weather stays calm because the axis doesn't tilt and the sun's the right distance away. She lay back after looking at one of the images of a beach. Broad, white, and tideless, with that golden sun lying low over an endless blue-green sea. So that's nice. At least we know that the beach is going to look like what they want a beach to look like. The sea will be blue-green. The sand is white. So far, so good. I don't think I'd even be that mad if the colors didn't match, but, you know, there is something... I say that, but, like, the other day on Facebook, I think Cam shared a picture of, like, a deep in-ground pool that was painted red instead of blue on the bottom. And I cannot tell you how fucking unsettling it was to see this, like, pool of what looked like either blood, but really for me it looked more like a huge pool full of Kool-Aid. Just because of the painting on the bottom, it completely changed everything. And that started a thread where people began to share pictures of other pools that were other colors. And even colors that you'd think I would be into, like pink and purple. I am not interested. I want my blue pool because I associate blue with like coolness and calmness, the kind of vibe you want and in the summertime, you know? And all of these other colors, I just could not get behind it. So I say that I wouldn't care, but I bet I would. I bet if it was like, you know, the beach had like green sand and the water was red, I would just be like, what in the fuck? But yeah, this description of this place being so deeply uneventful just sent up all kinds of alarm bells for me. It felt weird. Like, what kind of people are they where there's no crime at all, where there's no disease at all? What could possibly be happening? I don't understand how, like, life, like, just, it feels as if the world isn't touching this place. And once we get to her dream later, it's almost seeming like that's exactly what's going on. And I don't know what to make of it. And when I say the world isn't touching this place, I just mean like, I guess entropy isn't touching this place, but like what happens when you don't want entropy to invade it all? The alternative is everything's just in stasis forever, which doesn't feel good either. So let's see. She falls asleep and dreams the beach is full of statues. Nita stood around in a twilight that was not the one that came before sunset, but the one that came before dawn. The water ran up and down the beach, strangely quiet. The waves were very small. She thought perhaps she was on a lake shore somewhere. At this time of the day, everything seemed to be the same color, a soft bluish gray. The beach ran seemingly to infinity on each side. Every time Nita looked in a different direction, there seemed to be more of them. They were wonderfully made. 100,000 tall statues. It seemed to Nita that they had been painted to look just like real people. Very tall people, of whom even the shortest were 6 or 7 feet high. They wore long, loose, comfortable clothes, tunics and soft trousers and long skirts, and they were all dark and very handsome, with blind, bland faces, all slightly smiling. Nita went over to the closest of them, admiring the wonderful realism with which the statue had been carved. You could even see the coarse, soft weave in the fabric of the clothes as if it were real. She reached out to touch and found that it was fabric, and the arm underneath it was warm. They're not statues. Nita snatched her hand back, shocked, but there was no answering movement from not a statue, a person. What's the matter with them? Why don't they move? Why don't you move? She cried to the night. What's wrong? No voice answered her at first. But then slowly, Nita began to hear another sound, one she'd mistaken for the sound of the little waves coming up the beach. It was someone whispering. The whisper said, "We are as we have decided to be. Everything is fine." "It's not," Nita said. "There's more to life than just standing around. You should move. You should do things." "We are as we've decided to be," said another whisper, and another, until there was a whole chorus of them, all saying, as if in perfect content, "Everything is fine. Everything is fine." In the dream, Nita wasn't convinced. She started to walk down the beach, looking for just one of these people who would say something besides, "Everything is fine." Finally, she broke into a run, looking into face after smiling face, and the speed of her running stirred the clothes of the people she ran past, but nothing else. None of them moved. None of them turned to watch her. Finally, after a long dream time of running, Nita stopped because this was a dream, and she wasn't out of breath, but she could hear the whispering. "We are as we've decided to be, and everything is fine." So then she sees this figure coming toward her. And it comes closer, and she finds herself deeply afraid of it, and also finds herself unable to move. Like this paralysis is somehow contagious. He was only as tall as she was, but Nita felt as afraid of him as if he'd been 100 times taller. He was as dark-skinned as everyone else, wearing pale, long, loose clothes like the statues wore. He had long, dark, reddish hair stuff that hung down his back, and his eyes were dark too, unreadable. He came to stand right in front of Nita, and nothing she could do made her able to move so much as a muscle, though she desperately wanted to get away. "I've been waiting for you a long time," the man said. "You know what has to be done." Nita couldn't speak, couldn't even shake her head. "It's all right," he said. "It'll be morning soon." And sure enough, dawn was coming on, with a rush as if something had held it back, waiting for this man to arrive. Now the whole eastern sky went pale, and the whole beach went up in a single cry of terror, as at last, the statues spoke. "Nope. Don't like that." So many things about this. Like, I'm wondering, if this guy is the one wizard that exists on that planet. I have so many questions. Are they actually in stasis when they arrive, we don't see any beings? If they are, how is this exchange program possible? It doesn't seem like anybody's coming from this planet to, the exchange program, in other words, is not the way it works in the U.S., where somebody from France comes here and we go to France, like that kind of thing, where it's a direct one-to-one from the same country. They are coming from all over the place. So that's not really the question. I just mean, how do they participate in something like an exchange program? If they are in stasis like they seem to be, it can't be literal. Or maybe it is literal, but it's temporary. The fact that the sun comes up and they are able to... But maybe that's a metaphor. I don't know. But it just was really creepy. It was a well-done sequence. It felt very dreamlike as you're reading it. And just... There is something about some dreams where it's not that anything exactly is wrong, but the whole energy in the dream, you're like, oh, this is terrifying. And it's difficult when you tell somebody in the morning, oh my God, I had the scariest dream. You describe it and it doesn't sound that scary. But in the dream, it was so ominous and sinister, and there's just no real way to get that energy across in the light of day. And I feel like this is a really great example of that kind of dream. And when Nita wakes up, she is just like, oh, Jesus Christ. And she immediately puts that in her dream journal. When she finished, she went down for breakfast. Dareen was ahead of her, which was moderately unusual. So Dareen has an orientation pack also for information on the incoming guests. Apparently their dad also gets one, and there's a little translator in it so that it will translate to English from the speech to text converter, as she puts it. They're getting 3 guests, and the instant she said that, I was like, 3? Where are you putting them? And it takes Nita a minute, but eventually she asks the same question. And Dareen says they'll stay in the pub tents. That's what they're for. They can put as much of their own stuff in there as they like. If it turns out they need it, beds, furniture, whatever, In fact, I've been looking over the docs, and they could do a lot more than that if they liked. And this moment is Nita, like, immediately is like, okay, bitch, what sketchy shit are you about to do? Because she can just hear it in Dareen's voice. Okay, you're about to try something shady that you kind of know you probably shouldn't. Dareen tries to say, I never said I'm going to do it. I just said that you could do it. And I'm like, listen, you're not fooling anybody, Dareen. Come on. I will say, though, Nita very quickly comes to the realization, oh, but if she does some shit that's stupid, I won't be here. That's amazing. It is so not my problem. I love this. And I was like, girl, there is nothing like the moment that you realize that's none of my business. I'm free. It's like the last day at work, you know, where you gave your notice and somebody did some dumb shit that you know in just 2 or 3 days, the fallout of that is going to be ugly. And you just realize you won't be there. Oh, what a shame. I guess you'll just have to deal with the consequences of your own idiotic actions. I love this moment. And Dareen's like, if you change the permeability of the portentous matter-void interface. Wait a minute, Nita said. That's reverse engineering. The custom gate interface said you weren't supposed to do that. To the gate, yeah. But the portentous... I mean, look. Dareen's not wrong. It was specifically about the gate that rule was, you know, like, I can't help but be like, she has a point. But also, Dareen, can you just, like, not fuck with shit for, like, a day? Honestly, girl, what is it that compels you? You know what? I shouldn't even talk. I know what compels her. Because she just always wants to just take it to the next level. That's just her compulsion. And I fucking relate, actually. I shouldn't even be unfair. That's exactly how I am. I was just talking about this. Owen and I were discussing, like stuff that I'm doing for the wedding. And I am choosing things that are so intricate and take so much work. But I'm choosing them because I like anything less and I don't love it. It's fine, but it doesn't provoke a reaction. And if I want something that's like going to be photographed 1,000,000 times on one of the most important days of my life, probably the one massive party I will ever get to throw in my life, I want to have a strong reaction to it. I want to look at it and be like, oh my God, that is beautiful. So I keep choosing shit that's difficult because I have to make it all myself because I can't afford to buy that shit. So I keep biting off a little bit more than I can chew. And I'm choosing to do that. I don't have to. Nobody's making me. Nobody else will care. I care, though. So you know what, Dareen? I take it back. I see you. I feel for you. I understand that. It's just one of those things when you're like somebody who is a bit of an overachiever and you tend to have a little bit more vision than the average person. And I will fully admit I am feeling myself a little bit here. But let's be frank, guys. The average wedding aesthetic is so boring. It's so boring. And I kind of get the vibe that, like, Dareen feels that way about magic sometimes. That, like, oh, I mean, I guess you could do it that way. That's literally the least inventive or imaginative way to do it. But sure. I kind of, you know what? All right, fair. I take it all back. So she asks, how are you guys going to do your big transit to this planet? And she says, we'll use public transport to start with, short gate it to Grand Central, and then go over the crossings from there. After that, we pick up a scheduled service for Alalu. There it is. The manual says there are outbound gatings from the crossings about once every 2 hours or on demand. No big deal. Once every 2 hours or on demand. Not frequent. So this is when Nita is like realizing that she really should go pack. And we get a scene of her beginning to put way too much shit into this tent. And finally, she comes to the conclusion that I came to a little while back, because I was saying, you know, how great it is to be able to just pop in and out. Then you don't have to pack absolutely everything, because, you know, I am an overpacker. I always want to be overprepared. And it's something that can wind up biting me. It's just, you know, you don't need everything almost ever. But anytime that you thought of packing something and then you wind up needing it, but you didn't pack it, you feel like an idiot. So she eventually is like, oh God, what am I doing? I can just come home. Because she's packing like several stacks of underwear before she's like, oh my God, I could just come back and get it. And I'm like, you could just come back and do laundry. Like, all of this stuff is going to be very manageable. A lot of clothes in cardboard boxes, every swimsuit she owned, much other junk from her dresser drawers that Nita had gradually realized she couldn't do without. And she goes and gets some towels, some beach towels, thinks about sunblock, and then realizes she could use wizardry for that. And I also couldn't help but think, like, you don't know what the sun is like there, and I'm not sure that, like, sunblock, the way that it works on Earth, would function even. So a wizardry is probably better anyway. So her dad comes in at this point and is like, dude, are you leaving anything here? What the fuck? And this is sort of the reaction that I got when I first packed for boarding school. I just took practically everything, all the decorations, everything. And I will say that my room was rad. I had a lot of people come hang out because it was just really nice in our room. So he says, I thought I'd see if you needed me to drive you and Kit to the station. No, we're going straight into Grand Central, and you should be getting ready for the visitors. There's not that much to do. The place is clean. Doreen did a good job of it. I guess I just wanted to see you off. Doreen did a good job of it. Did she? Did she, Dad? Oh. Okay. Look. Doreen's on vacation, and their dad is at work. So I'm going to give him a pass on this one. But I noticed it. I'm just saying. Okay? So, he says something about how she mentions Tom did something to his phone so that he can call her anytime. And her dad is like, I hope that they don't find another way to charge me for services from my cell service. And she was like, you know what? If they do, I need you to go to the phone company and see what they say. And I want you to take me with you, because I absolutely need to know what they're going to say about that. And I was like, that would actually be hilarious. Just don't get confused and share them to the shop's Facebook page, honey. You'll get everyone confused. Facebook's mentioned. This has to be a new edit, right? Because, like, this is... I would love to know what it originally said. But, yeah, anyway... Doreen is waiting to say goodbye, desperately trying to act as if she's not waiting to say goodbye, because she's like that. And Doreen tells her, I don't want to see you for at least a couple days. Well, just do me a favor and call me if anything starts to happen, okay? If I need you, sure. I want progress reports. If Dad will be fine. Don't you trust me with him? Nita broke out in a sudden sweat, as any direct answer was likely to get her in trouble, either as a wizard or as a sister. Look, just set your manual to generate a daily précis, okay? If I don't hear from you, I can check that. It won't be any trouble. Yeah, sure, Doreen said, and without warning, she hugged Nita. You take care of yourself, she said. Don't get in trouble. And I kind of agree again with Dareen on this. Like, the whole point of this is you getting out of here so that you aren't responsible for everybody. No, babe, you do not, absolutely do not need a report. You don't. It's none of your business. You just had the realization in the kitchen. Oh, hey, if Dareen decides to do something lunatic, it's not my problem. Why are you gonna, like, ruin that for yourself, sweetie? Because she's a control freak. That's what's happening. Don't fall into that. Come on, Nita. Don't be like me, girl. Don't do it. Oh, it's not a good place to be. And they say goodbye, meet at Kit's house, and he is having a bit of a time because his mother is trying to get him to pack everything. He is being a little bit more level-headed than Nita is. His mother is operating in a similar fashion as to how Nita was behaving when she first started to pack. And eventually, I love, let's see, she went in and found him standing in front of his own pup tent, looking very resigned and simply throwing through the interface everything his mother handed him. Carmela, sitting cross-legged in front of the TV as usual, was watching the whole process with intense amusement, though not laughing out loud. "What time is it?" "Almost 2, she said. "We should go." "Instantly, if not sooner," Kit said silently. "I'm starting to feel like a garage sale here." "You can always smuggle all this stuff back later." "I'm planning on it." So his mom is making him bring a jacket, even though the average temperature there is like 80 degrees. And also she packs him a sack lunch. "That's it," he said. "I don't know. I keep getting the idea I've forgotten something. Tell me later, Mama. I'll call you, and then I can come back for whatever it is." So at this point, his mother gives him a big hug and she gets rather emotional, which apparently is really unusual for her, and Nita is a little unnerved to see it. I really like this because it does feel like kids heading off for, like, college, you know? Even if it's like a local college and you're going to be able to come home over the weekends, it's a total change. It's a big shift in the way your parents are functioning day to day, knowing that you're just not going to be at home. You know, it's exciting for the kid and maybe a little bit bittersweet, but I'll tell you what, when I left home, I didn't look back. And I've always just been like that, just very excited for whatever is next and not really regretful of what I'm leaving behind almost ever. I don't know what that says about me, but eventually I'll look back and be like, oh, I do miss that place. Oh, I wish I spent more time doing XYZ. But, like, in the moment, I am just like, kick the dust off my feet. You know, I'm out of here. So they arrive at Grand Central Terminal and they go and see the cat who runs things. I love this little guy. I forget too, Kit, when he uses the invisibility spell, it's itchy. And that is kind of a nice detail. I kind of enjoy that there's like a physical feeling to it that's sort of uncomfortable, because I like whenever magic has parameters that make something a little bit less practical to use all the time. And granted, even within the way magic works, just as a function, that it takes energy for you to power spells, and that energy is renewable but takes time. That's already like a built-in sort of, what's the word I want? Obstacle, I guess. But things like that, you know, you could be like, oh, I could just walk around invisible all the time and do all kinds of shit. But it just being really itchy, I just like that as a little detail of like, yeah, no, you wouldn't want to do that. Because I know that were I invisible, I'll be honest, I'd rob banks. Probably. Like, because it's even mentioned that there are ways to use their magic to get around, like, infrared and all of that stuff. Okay. I heard you were coming through this morning. Nita looked down. Standing by them was a big, stocky, silvery gray tabby cat waving his tail. And Nita knew only she and Kit and Ponch could see him because he was using a form of selective invisibility that left him visible to wizards but invisible to other humans. Ura was one of the feline wizards who kept the New York world gates running properly. Cats being much better than other earthly species at seeing the superstrings on which the gate structures were hung. And this was just really interesting because there's a weird moment where Punch and Ura are sort of facing off. Punch put down his ears, which had been up, and let his tongue hang out. Ura's whiskers went forward. "Nice doggy," he said. "Woof, woof," Punch said, his eyes glinting. The irony was audible. Later on, Punch uses cat speak, which shocks everybody. He says, "Oh, I was doing a correspondence course," which I assume means there's a cat in our neighborhood. But he's out here just learning shit that Kit didn't teach him, that Kit didn't know about, it seems like. What is going on? I want to know. So, he asks them about, like, the fact that they're going out for pleasure. I did one of those once. The species was aquatic. I didn't feel dry for weeks afterwards. Nice people, though. Where are they sending you? Ala'u. Never heard of it, Ura said, but why should I? With 1 billion homeworlds out there and no time to see them all. By the way, were you issued subsidized jump-throughs? They're wrapped up tight? You haven't tried to commission them? Huh? No, Nita said. The doc said you absolutely shouldn't do that. Okay, good, Ura said. That's fine. And he explains that if you take an open world gate through an open world gate, you can sort of turn everything inside out irreversibly. Yikes. Yama says, "I'm very nervous no one has heard of this planet." Yeah, and the thing is, when he says, "and why should I?" I was like, okay, rational, that's fair. But when they go to the next stop and they give the name of the planet and she's like, "Oh, where?" I was like, all right, you know what? I was able to excuse it with the first one. But the second one, also not knowing where the fuck this place is, I don't like it. Like, that's shady now. This is a person who is, like, in charge of this stuff, you know? So, Ura says, "Try not to destroy your host civilization or anything." And they're like, "Well, that wasn't our fault." And also gives them a job. Stop by the station master's office when you get there and tell him we'd appreciate it if they'd route the elective main trunk non-typical traffic around us for the next 36 hours. When Ree's finished, we're going to have to do some matching maintenance on the local gate substrates. Do you guys ever stop and think about what the fuck Diane Duane was smoking? 'Cause I do. She, like, this shit. What? Literally, like, where are you? Why? Like, I just don't know. What are you doing? Oh my God, this is wild. Jacob says the dictionary. She was smoking the dictionary? That feels right. Oh man, the dictionary, man. So the locust will be patent for the crossings in about 6 minutes after the 2:20. If you hurry, you can catch it. So, Orab paused in mid-turn. This is right after Paunch says something that I won't try and say out loud. And Nita's eyes widened slightly as she caught sight of the look on Ura's face. It was always dangerous to judge animals' expressions by comparing them with human ones, but wizards' knowledge of the subverbal modes of speech lent them some slight latitude in reading non-human expressions, at least those of creatures from their own worlds that were not too far removed from them in basic psychology. Whatever Ponch had said, it had been in Ailerin, the cat's language, and it hadn't been something Ura had been expecting. It had also gone by too quickly for Nita to listen in the speech and hear what it meant. Yes, certainly, Ura said, recovering himself. He waved his tail at them all once more, then strolled off across the main concourse. What was that about? Okay, they say, what was that about? And Ponch just says correspondence course. That's not what he asked you, though. He didn't ask you, how do you know how to speak cat? He asked you, what was that about? And you, sir, very noticeably, did not answer him. What's that about? What did you say? Just curious. If you've got nothing to hide, then why hide it? I'm just asking questions. So, they go on to the next step. What is it called? Crossings Hypergate Facility. I am not going to talk about this too much. The description of the place. But Nita says, let's get out of here before something materializes on top of us. Or actually, no, Kit says that. This wasn't really a concern, Nita knew. As the manual made it plain, the whole NT area was programmed not to allow two different transportees, whether using wizardry or another form of world gating, to occupy the same space. All the same, she and Kit and Ponch made their way toward the edge of the non-typical transit area, looking up at what every tourist passing through spent time admiring. The ceiling. Or rather, the ceilings. For there were thousands of them, real and false, interpenetrating one another or floating under or over one another, in a myriad of airy, randomly shaped structures of glass and metal and other materials that Nita didn't immediately recognize. The effect was like a shattered, miles-wide, horizontal stained glass window, eternally looking for new and interesting ways to assemble itself and eternally changing its mind. It was morning at the moment, and the violent silver-gilt light, only slightly softened by the eternal green-white clouds of daylight hours, burned through the glass high above them and cast bright sliding shadows on the vast floor in 1,000 colors, all changing every moment as ceilings high up in the tremendous structure briefly eclipsed one another and parted company again. That sounds pretty cool. It sort of reminds me of the shifting staircases in Harry Potter, except if there were thousands of them at once. And this is as they're walking around, they made their way down the main drag. There were 3 main wings, each several miles long, and small intergates strung all down the length of each wing, marked on the floor by single or clustered hexagons that glowed in various visible and invisible colors. So, let's see, I'm trying to find the spot. Kit put his hand on a pole and said in the speech, information for Alalu? I keep saying this name wrong. On the side facing him and Nita, the jarring red symbols that had previously been showing blanked out and were replaced by a long string of symbols in blue. Wing 3, gate 506, in a little more than an hour. Great, Nita said. We can sit down somewhere near the gate and have a snack. So apparently Kit, last time they were here, chose something weird to eat that did not work out for him. Were we there for that? Or is this something that we're hearing about secondhand? I don't remember. But this I thought was really kind of a fun idea. And we have a whole little bit later about how they go to a diner, the equivalent of it. And when they try to pay using their manuals, it doesn't work. It's been taken care of by whatever program it is that they're involved with right now. And that it automatically finds out your body chemistry to make sure that what you eat won't disagree with you. Would that be rad or what, if we could just have that? But it would be such a shame if there were things that disagreed with you that you weren't totally aware of. So they just give you a bowl of like unseasoned oatmeal and they're like, yeah, that's probably safe, we think. Like, you know, it turns out you're allergic to all kinds of shit and you're like, I would have dealt with the discomfort in exchange for a little flavor. I wouldn't have been mad about it. So they wind up coming and talking to this being, this person, a giant centipede, the station master, who is very rude to them for reasons that I don't understand. First of all, when he sees them, he says, "You again." They're hard on their associates, these two, the station master said to Paunch, and on the surroundings. Where they go, things tend to get trashed. Are you insured? Paunch yawned. I'm not too worried about it, he said. It wasn't our fault the last time. And no, I suppose not. Well, the facility's general fund handled it, and all the damage caused by your broodmate's incursion and departure. I assume this isn't a social call? No, the New York gating team asked us to deliver a message. New York, it said. That would be Earth. It sounded actively annoyed. That's right, Kit said, throwing Nita a glance. Here's what they say. He read Ora's message aloud. The station master's antenna worked while Kit read, the equivalent of a nod. Very well, it said. I'll message them when I have a moment. Let's move on. You have your departure data? Don't let the gate constrict on your fundament on the way out. He just said don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. That's what just happened. What is his problem? And both Kit and Nita are kind of like, and Kit actually says, is that just me or was he being really rude? And Nita's hesitant to say that because she's like, well, we can't judge everything by like how human beings are expecting other human beings to react. But he's like, yeah, okay, but you agree with me, though. And she just has to be like, yeah, I do. I don't know that I should, but yes. And I'm curious about if this has anything to do with anything else, or if it's just the fact that they're developing a bit of a reputation. I don't know. I mean, don't all wizards deal with this kind of shit? Maybe not. So... let's see. They'd found a little snack bar 100 yards or so along from the gate, and once they'd figured out how to convert the seating system to suit bipedal humanoids, they discovered that all the tables had an embedded programmable menu of a type new to Nita. You told the table, or touched in the long version of the 10-letter acronym for your species, adding 8 letters that concern themselves only with your body chemistry, and the menu embedded in the tabletop changed itself to show only things that wouldn't disagree with you. I love the detail about how here that it will change. It's like the table setup and chairs will change according to like the body type that you have. And also earlier it mentioned something about how certain colors are being shown that maybe human beings can't see to like translate signs in a way that will be visible to creatures that have a totally different visual sense than human beings do. I love all those details to just acknowledge how many different bodies there are. It would be great if the real world did this kind of thing to acknowledge that everybody isn't built the same, but that's a whole other fucking topic. Yama in the chat says, I did one of those allergy test things and it said I'm sensitive to butter and lime. Excuse me? I did not hear you. I choose to ignore it. Yeah. Like, I know so many people who are lactose intolerant and they're just like, guess I'll die because I will not be going without dairy, and I cannot help but agree. I've never been tested or found out. I don't care. I'm eating dairy, and that's the end of that story. Thank you and goodbye. So, walking along beside them, Paunch burped happily and wagged his tail. And he says something. They ask if they can come back, and he realizes that he can come back by himself, which is a really interesting thought. I wonder if he, like, could he pay for something? Like, I don't know what that looks like for him, So Nita goes up to this gate technician. We're scheduled for a gating to Alalu. Alalu? Never heard of it. Where is it? The gate tech's feathered crest went up and down as the display brought up an abbreviated version of Nita's name and identity information in the speech. Oh, I see. Thank you, emissary. How interesting. I've never gated anyone there before. It doesn't seem to get much traffic. But then, that's quite a jump. It's nice for you that it's subsidized, isn't it? And then, at this point, Kit says something like, we sure think so. And she replies with, so do a lot of your colleagues. I've seen quite a few of them through here in the past 2 hands of days. A little more than a week. Do these exchanges usually happen at this time of year, or are they staggered? I've never really thought about it, said the gate tech. I always assumed they were staggered, but there does seem to be an unusual amount of excursus traffic right now. Probably a coincidence. The time indicator's up there on the standard, emissary. Stand clear of the locus until it goes dark, then enter it and hold your position. And go well. Don't like it. She's never heard of it. That's her job, is sending people here. What the fuck? Apparently, there's supposedly an automatic transit that goes every 2 hours, according to what Nita said, but she's never heard of it? How? Every 2 hours is not that infrequent. Every 2 weeks, I could see being like, oh, maybe, I think I've heard of that place. You would still, kind of recognize the name, right? I don't know. I'm saying that, but I don't know how many places they're doing jumps to. Maybe there's 200,000 a day, and it makes total sense that she wouldn't notice. So anyway, they sit down and wait. 5 minutes went by, then 10. Then they were still the only ones waiting there. This must really be a quiet place we're going to. That's what the manual said. So they stepped into the hexagon. Paunch got up, sauntered onto it, and sat down next to Kit, counting down from 59. Nita found herself under another sky with the wind in her hair. She took a first deep breath of another world's air, rich with scents she couldn't identify, and then completely forgot to breathe as she tried to find the horizon and get herself oriented. It wasn't that there was any trouble locating the horizon proper. In front of her lay endless green fields all starred with blue flowers until, as she looked much farther away, the blue of the flowers was all she could see. But beyond that, where the horizon should have been, there was more of it. Landscape dabbled in 100 shades of green and blue-green, sloping upward to gently rolling hill country, sloping further upward still to the beginnings of mountains. They were not so high themselves, but the horizon was. To Nita, the world around her seemed to climb halfway up that blue sky, impossibly high. It felt wrong. But it wasn't. It's me, she told herself, working to breathe. It's just me. Nita knew perfectly well that the apparent flatness of her home planet was an illusion. She had seen on the moon the unexpected curvature of a body much smaller than the Earth, so that the horizon seemed cramped and close, and things a mile or so away seemed much too near. What she saw now was the opposite. Things that seemed far away would turn out to be farther still. Those mountains towering against the edge of things were even farther away, and that was the problem. It shouldn't be possible to be under a sky and still see things that were so far away against a horizon that left you feeling like you were at the bottom of a huge, shallow bowl with all that blue sky pooling on top of you. It's just big, Nita thought. Just the size of the planet makes it seem this way. But it was too big. And something else about it seized her by the heart and squeezed so that she was almost having trouble breathing. Why do I know this place? What does this remind me of? Neats, Kit said to her. Neats, you all right? Yeah, she said. How about you? Yeah. She glanced over at Kit. He looked a little pale, but seemed otherwise all right. But how can it be this big? She said. How can anything be this big? And do you feel it? There you are. Sorry I'm late, someone said from behind them. Daisyo, cousins. Welcome to Alalu. Okay. First of all, taking bets on whether this person is the dark-skinned, orange-haired man that she saw. I'm going with 70% chance yes. However, a part of me thinks no. It would be the easy answer. But I don't know. Some about that just feels like too easy. Other thing, the bigness of it being too big. What does that mean exactly? I'm not even sure what Nita means or if she knows what she means when she says that. Like, it's too big for what? It's too big. I mean, the planet is like, I think when I looked it up, it was something like 4 times the size of Earth. And perhaps she just got transported into a valley. You know, like there are... the thing is, Nita's not an idiot. If she got transported into a valley, she would know, I got transported into a valley. That's what's happening. But that's not the reaction that we're getting from her. We're getting a weirdly panicked response that feels like there is some other sense being set off here. Probably either she's being reminded of something from a dream, or there's something about this that's like, I'm going to go ahead and say that it's a dream. There's nothing that I remember from a dream that we've read about specifically that this is reminding me of. Like, I don't think that the dream where she was on the beach mentioned anything about the horizon of the planet or blue flowers or anything like that. But I don't know. Maybe it's maybe there's something else. I'm also sort of, so in the Dresden Files, there is a discussion that Harry has with Bob the Skull. If you don't read the series, Bob the Skull is sort of an advisor, a spirit that lives inside of a human skull. And he says that there can be like 2 outcomes to a major disaster that they're facing. And one is rampant death, lots of things just getting killed off, or rampant growth. And Harry's response to rampant growth is, that doesn't sound so bad. And he's like, yeah, it wouldn't, except that everything grows, including things like bacteria and fungi and viruses. Essentially, too much of anything throws everything off balance and is not good. You don't want just, for example, a population just growing will use up resources. That won't be good. If you have an invasive species that explodes in growth, that will kill off all kinds of other things. So maybe the sense that she's having of this place being too big is something related to the stasis, like, because I keep thinking about the fact that these people were sort of frozen in place and that they're alleging that they want it that way. Combined with Nita's research saying that there is no crime, no disease, no natural disasters, none of the things that are the usual daily life obstacles of the average person. If they don't have any of that, and they're in stasis, is the planet expanding? Is it growing too much with no resistance of any kind? Is there something out of balance there? Oh, I don't know what to think here. And like the fact that guys, I was saying last episode how, I really hope that it turns out this is an actual vacation for them and they don't have some sort of huge crisis to deal with. Well, first of all, that sounds like that's a done deal. Major crisis is here already, it seems. But this person who's greeting them is so... I don't know. This is part of why I don't think it's the same person as from her dream. In the dream, he's like, I've been looking for you. And then here, it's just, oh, there you are. Sorry I'm late. A much more sort of casual attitude. I can't tell if that's just because one is in a dream and the other one is in life, and that's the difference. And is the fact that they were going to Alalu related to why the centipede was being so mean to them, or is that a whole other thing? And why would the powers have agreed to an exchange program someplace that is so dangerous? Dangerous isn't really the right word. Questionable? I don't really know what word I'm looking for. I mean, I guess the powers are just interested in the health of the planet, so sending wizards probably seems to them to be a good idea. You know what I'm curious about now is if they're here to help, what are the wizards being sent to Nita's to stay? What are they being sent to help with? Because it's only fair that they get a major crisis to deal with also. I don't think it's fair for Nita and Kit to be the ones that always have to go and face down shit. But then the other people coming on from the other side, they do get to have just a chill vacation. That's not justice. That's not fair. I don't like that. The weirdness of the horizon being the specific thing. I can't tell if it's something that I'm supposed to recognize from another book or like a memory or something casual. I don't know. And if nobody has gone to Alalu to the point where like the person in charge of setting up their transit never had heard of it, if they got redirected to somewhere else, would anybody notice? I have to assume they would. That the fact that they're part of this very specific program, that the program is programmed in such a way, and I use the word programmed for magic because it seems like a lot of it is sort of like put into place using the speech and code, and then you walk away and it continues to function like code does. I have to assume that it can be set up properly without like interference being possible because of it being in an official capacity. That said, I mean, I'm assuming that. I don't know that, like, is it possible that Alalu is invented? I keep thinking about something like, like that show Leverage, where they could create an entire, human being with a famous history in a certain subject or a certain line of work on the internet with just some clever coding, Photoshop, site building, and, fake links. Is that possible to create a planet that doesn't exist and fool a system into sending people there, like allegedly sending people there when that's not actually happening? Like, how much can they be tricked? I want to think that's not possible either. I'm very paranoid is what I'm saying. There's just a lot of potential things here. And Nita's reaction being, Kit seems also thrown off. He's a little pale. But he isn't having the same intensity of response, not even remotely, that Nita's having, where she feels like she can't breathe. So it feels as if something is specific to her, which makes me wonder if this is something to do with like having dove in and out of different worlds when she was practicing to mess with the kernel of her mother's world. Like, is it something that she's got more experience in than Kit does, perhaps? But that's why I think it's probably more likely just a dream that it's reminding her of. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know. But that is the end of the chapter. So I'm going to wrap up. I think the next episode is right on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. It's next Friday, September 17th. Okay, cool. So yeah, I'll be able to find out pretty shortly. Yama is in the chat saying, oh, I didn't think of that. No, I could be just talking out of my ass. It might be something way more simple than that. I have no idea. But, it's just unclear to me how magic works here sometimes and what's possible. So I let myself spin out a little bit when I'm theorizing. Yama says, can't wait for the next chapter. I want your reaction to something so funny. Oh boy, I'm excited. All right, guys. Well, thank you again very much for listening. Thank you to Yama for commissioning this episode. Really appreciate you. And thank you to Jacob for sending me the breakdown on how to read these chapters. Oh, I meant to send it to Patricia and I forgot. All right. Let me do that right after I finish this. All right, guys. I will see you next Friday. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.